Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're well. You're amazing, amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. It's Thursday. It's Thursday still. You're still looking amazing. And this is video 2 of 2. And this is going to be quite a brief video. Because we notice, and I think a lot of us have noticed, that the Goncalves family have gone very, very quiet since all of this leak information. I believe that it's very likely that they have been advised to perhaps not say anything more publicly. So I know the comments are still quite rife on their page that are in attack mode still, but them themselves have certainly become more subdued, and they are focusing more on the family, you know what I mean? The family and how they feel about the situation and things like that. We're not seeing their normal excited attacks and claims that we have done previously. But I have to ask something, and it's something that does bug me specifically around Steve Goncalves, because I spoke recently on the fact that I felt that Steve Goncalves had potentially been weaponized by either law enforcement, a member of law enforcement, or even the prosecution. Because what do we know about Steve Goncalves? We know that out of all of the family members in the aftermath of this crime, Steve Goncalves had appeared to be the one person who was willing to go public and voice his thoughts and opinions. He was somebody who wouldn't be quietened. And I now wonder what happened with Steve Goncalves and whether the truth of the matter with respect of Steve Goncalves is indeed that he was used. He was used to feed information to, because they knew that Steve Goncalves would go out into the public and he would share thoughts, opinions, and it would affect a massive group of people as the Goncalves army grew in size. And it takes me back to this because I have to ask the question, and that is, a store manager in Moscow, Idaho, has said that Kaylee Goncalves voiced fears about a potential stalker before she and 3 other students were killed. The man told News Nation that Goncalves and Madison Mogen had visited his business about 3 weeks before they were killed, along with fellow University of Idaho students Anna Knodel and Ethan Chapin inside the young woman's off-campus rental home on the 13th of November. He said the Goncalves and Mogen would always come together with 2 other girls. The last time the group was at the store, he said, he had asked them if they were traveling together in an attempt to stay safe. One of them more or less openly says, "Oh yes, we've had one of our friends be stalked before, so that is why we travel in a group like this," the man said, adding that Mogen was who voiced the concerns while she motioned to Goncalves. You could tell they were all obviously trying to keep Kaylee safe and to be there for her as good friends. Moscow police said weeks ago that they had looked extensively at reports that Goncalves had a stalker, but were unable to link that line of investigation to the murders. The criminal probe entered its 2nd month this week with the killer at large. Now, there was a report, well, I'm still trying to find, if I find it, I'll pin it up on the screen, and it was talking about the fact that they had found 2 guys who they had accused of stalking, and apparently they'd gone to local businesses to try and hook up with women or whatever. But I asked the question, right, because Steve Goncalves had made this statement that basically he trusts nobody. He doesn't trust anybody, and he needs to see the stuff himself. Needs to see it in order for that to be proven to him. And until that happens, then he remains open to everything. We had seen previously, with respect of Brian Coberger, there was a huge sort of disparity between Steve Goncalves and his beliefs of the case and the accused and Christy Goncalves. Christy Goncalves absolutely fallen into the Brian Coberger did this and deserves to pay kind of area, even though, again, I've said this multiple times, there is evidence that even Christy Goncalves believes that there was more than one perpetrator in this crime, but her mindset is, let's deal with this one, then we can focus on what needs to happen afterwards. and Steve Goncalves being the more open one. Steve Goncalves himself even alluding to the fact that he was not 100% satisfied that the people who had claimed to have alibis, that those alibis were actually alibis. Because I've asked this question multiple times, and that is, what makes an alibi an alibi? Who around the Idaho 4 case truly had an alibi? Because you can't say that someone's got an alibi when their alibi is somebody else saying that they was with them, that they themselves could potentially require an alibi. Do you know what I mean? I'd like you to let me know down below what you believe the definition of an alibi is, and who you think absolutely 100% has a fail-safe alibi around the Idaho 4 case. We know that Brian Coberger's alibi isn't the best in terms of what Idaho states it has to be in order to be an alibi. But I would say, do the likes of Jack DeCure have a solid alibi then? Do the surviving roommates truly have a solid alibi when they can only be each other's alibi? How does that work? So look, with respect of Steve Goncalves, when you consider that there is evidence out there and these things, right, that Kaylee had potentially a stalker, was having to be chaperoned around for protection. The fact that when you hear about the injuries sustained to the individuals in that house, Kaylee seemed to come off the worst. From what we've learned, that might transpire that's not the case, but it seems to be the case. Also, Kaylee Goncalves weren't supposed to be in the house that night. But she was. She'd been summoned over to the house by Dylan Mortonson, apparently. Not Madison Mogan, but Dylan Mortonson had summoned her over to the house. That this was a football night. A night when Davis University played University of Idaho. So a night where a party house you would expect would be a rumbling with the dancers and the drinkers and the, I don't know, maybe other extracurricular activity. Point being that if you was somebody on the peripheral of this house and you was planning a crime to go into there with the cars outside this property, being a football night, a party house, and knowing that you could walk into here and see multiple people and become unstuck potentially, why on this specific night would you enter a house unless Kaylee Goncalves was indeed the target? So I asked Steve Goncalves, knowing that there was a potential for Kaylee to have a stalker, when you know that she sustained the injuries that she sustained, when you know that there are other DNAs around the crime scene, that there is blood found in the house, there is a glove found outside the house, how is it so easy to ignore all of that information and simply believe that Brian Coberger has done it when we take into consideration what is the evidence of Brian Coberger being the person who did it? Because this is not disinformation or misinformation like I spoke about in video 1 earlier, because this is what we have with respect to Brian Coberger. We have Brian Coberger, who is a loner. He's an outsider. He's not from this area, but he would frequent the area, which seems to be a pattern of behavior, that he would go out hiking. He would go out hiking at night. This has been proven by people who said that they had seen him on evenings, and when they would be coming down the hill, he would be going up the hill. He was someone who would do this. We have seen behavior of Brian Coberger that would seem to suggest that he is actually quite a normal person, like the pool party aftermath where his text messages was twisted. You can't tell me that you, Steve Goncalves, can't understand that the information around that text message was trying to be manipulated, that the photos were not being manipulated to look worse than they perhaps were. The white Hyundai Elantra or the white car in the photographs, in the video clips that we see and have seen, they don't absolutely, undeniably depict a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra belonging to Brian Coberger. At best, you've got a car that it could be. It could be. The phone information, the phone data that plots this journey of Brian Coberger and his location. Again, how can someone who is seemingly smart, because I would suggest that Steve Goncalves is intelligent, but that intelligence seems to go out the window when you've got phone information and phone data that is seemingly being hidden and lied about, and a professional has come out with decades of experience and saying that this situation is wrong, and he's doing that work pro bono. But again, you as an individual with an intelligence that I would, and previously known to question everything, and by your own statement, you need to see everything to be sure of everything. Well, you haven't seen the returns, the search warrant returns on the phone data. Where is it? Because it exists. We know it exists. And why are the prosecution lying about it? When Kathy Mabbott herself seems to suggest multiple weapons being used, different injuries, you yourself even saying that there's an indication of the injuries not matching and different weapons being used potentially. They didn't have to go upstairs, these statements. What was the point in which Brian Coberger all of a sudden became the person that you absolutely now believe did this beyond a reasonable doubt, and this is just now delaying inevitability? I'd like to know the truth of that. Where does that now come from? This ability to now go against your own standards of proof and now accept circumstantial evidence with heavy indicators of lies, manipulation, the gag order literally being gone against, broken gag order to try and taint public perception that you seem to be happy with. Because I would think that a loving father whose daughter had been slain in such a horrible, heinous manner would want to stick to that initial statement, and that is, I need to see everything. I need to see everything. There are things that don't sit right. There's things that I'm not happy with, because I wouldn't be happy. And I haven't got skin in the game, and I still see the issues. And I believe that those people who are not seeing the issues are purely people who just want to be right. And they just want to fry Brian Coberger for this crime. But why would a parent just act the same as someone who hasn't got skin in the game, so it doesn't matter the outcome of this crime? Because it very much does matter the outcome of this crime to the parents of the deceased. So I still have to ask why, with respect of the DNA. Like, people will continuously push that Brian Coberger's DNA was found at the scene of this crime. How the fuck do you know that his DNA was found at the scene of the crime, truthfully? What, because Ann Taylor has turned around and said, okay, it is, but how did it get there? You're missing the point, that she's not arguing the fact that they're saying that the DNA is there. Her argument is, okay, it's there, how did it get there? Because he wasn't there. She's not saying her client. Are people so stupid that they can't understand that Ann Taylor is not agreeing that Brian Coberger was here? Ann Taylor's stance is her client is innocent of this crime. Innocent of this crime. So the DNA being there isn't her saying, well, it's his DNA because he did the crime. Her question is, how did his DNA get there? Because it can easily be explained. It can easily be explained, as sad as it sounds. And again, it goes into all of this circumstantial evidence. And when circumstantial evidence starts to build up, it gets to a point where it topples over. We spoke about this, and I agree that it does start to look bad. But if you then look at each individual thing on its own merit, you understand that all of the circumstantial evidence on its own is weak. It's weak circumstantial evidence. And it would seem to suggest that now we're having to go back and talk and dig up some really early stuff that what are they going to have to do? What, just paint that this circumstantial evidence is or needs to be taken into consideration because of the bad person that Brian Coberger is, that he was this incel or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's bizarre to me. It's absolutely bizarre to me. Let me know down below. Do you truly believe that all of the evidence that the DNA is absolutely 100% concrete? You're happy that to accept it as concrete because even without any workings out, no paperwork to support, you genuinely trust the FBI and law enforcement that they're telling you DNA was there, so it's definitely there. So therefore, Brian Coberger definitely did the crime. So we don't need a trial. I don't get it. That the car that you genuinely look at one of those pictures or multiple pictures, and you can absolutely tell that that's a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra belonging to Brian Coberger. That you're happy, 100% happy, to ignore the warnings of Cy someone with the experience that he has got, telling you that what they're telling you they have is impossible, but yet you're accepting it, and he's a conspiracy theorist. And again, I ask you, if you had skin in the game and you had a victim here, a child here, would you then look at it differently? And that, again, goes back to then Steve, and that is, why would a parent with so many seemingly red flags around this case, why would that individual truly be happy to go against their gut and their own standards of proof, as aforementioned, and simply say, yeah, Brian Coberger did it? What changed? Because the evidence didn't change. In fact, the evidence has slowly got more and more and more questionable as more and more information has come out. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Love you all. Mwah.